Hi, in this video I'm going to answer a bunch of bookish questions that other booktubers are also answering in their own videos. Question one is, how many books is too many books in a series? In my opinion, I think anything over 4 books is probably too much for one long story. Um, a bunch of standalones that are in a series using the same characters, that's all right because you can pick them up and put them down anytime you want. And if you've got a series that's a bunch of trilogies all strung together, but you don't have to keep reading from one trilogy to the next after you finish whatever you're reading at that point, then that's fine. So if you've got a 21 book series and it's broken into 7 trilogies, that's okay. It doesn't have to be held to 4 books in that case. Question two, how do you feel about cliffhangers? Personally, I don't really like them at the end of chapters. I think they're kind of an artificial way to get readers to keep reading and to keep going. And I don't like them. If your writing is that good, then they should want to keep going anyway. At the end of a book, I don't think they're okay at all, because if you're selling me a book, you should be selling me something that's either a complete story, or it should be marketed in such a way that I know that when I get to the end of that book, I've got to go to the next book to get the rest of the story. Question three, hardcover or paperback? I have some hardcovers. I'm more of a paperback guy. I prefer paperback simply because it's easier to transport, easier to take around. And the other thing is, if you drop a paperback and it gets damaged or whatever, it's not like you spent $30 on it. So it's not as big a deal if it gets damaged and beat up. You can toss it and buy another one for less than what one hardback would cost you. Question four, favorite book? This one's hard. I read a lot of genres, and so I'll probably give you a couple in each one. For sci-fi, it's obviously Frank Herbert's Dune, which is pretty common on a lot of people's lists. I also really like a book called The Strange Affair of Spring-Heeled Jack by Mark Hodder. It's a really great story. Takes place in Victorian England. It's very interesting, very good story. For fantasy, I like a book called Dawn Thief by James Barkley. It's basically kind of a Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of a thing, but it's not related to Dungeons and Dragons. But the characters are really interesting, and some of the events in it are pretty interesting, pretty wild. Some of the history from some of the characters is really interesting too. I also like The Great and Secret Show from Clive Barker. That's more dark fantasy, but there you go. That's one of my favorite books of his. For thrillers, Clear and Present Danger by Tom Clancy is a pretty good book, I thought. Probably my favorite Clancy book was Clear and Present Danger. And then I also like Lawrence Block's Hitman series, which has a character named Keller, who is basically a stamp collecting hitman. And it's a really entertaining 5 books for now. Hopefully, one of these days he'll write more. I don't know. As far as media tie-ins like Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5, whatever, probably my favorite media tie-in that I've ever read was Star Trek's The Eugenics Wars, which is basically all about the rise and fall of Khan. And if you've seen Star Trek 2, you know who Khan is. For short stories, I'm a pretty big Harlan Ellison fan. I really like some of his writing. The way he writes is pretty intense sometimes. And I like Shatterday from him, and also Alone Against Tomorrow. Those are 2 of my favorite collections. For like straight up science fiction or fantasy, just about any short story collection from Michael Swanwick is usually really worth the money. So there's that. Nonfiction, Dan Jones, The Wars of the Roses, really great stuff about medieval England. And also Bruce Cook's book Trumbo, which is about Dalton Trumbo, who was a screenwriter who was doing really well until McCarthyism in the 1950s got him blacklisted. So great book there. And I don't usually read a lot of biographies, but that one really pulled me in, and I had to go through it. Question 5, your favorite author. So I have a few here. Tim Powers is my all-time favorite. I like almost everything he's written, except for the last few years. I haven't liked some of the things he's put out, but just about everything he wrote in the 80s and 90s I really liked. And then Clive Barker, I read most of his stuff in the 80s. I had a whole Clive Barker phase where I like read everything I could get my hands on from him, and I enjoyed most of it. So there's that. And for short stories, and as I said earlier, Harlan Ellison. I also like a guy named Laird Barron. He makes really interesting word choices and just writes in a way that you can really feel what's going on in the story. So if you can pick up one of his collections, they're pretty good, worth the money. Question 6, ideal book length. For me, the ideal book is probably 350 to 500 pages. Um, I know a lot of books these days get longer than that. You know, if you read any of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, you're looking at some of those single books could be trilogies or quadrologies on their own, depending on how you could break up the story, I guess. But I think 350 to 500 is pretty good for a single book. Number 7, the most recent book you just couldn't finish. Most recent thing I couldn't finish is a sci-fi classic. A lot of people are probably gonna like give me nasty comments when they see this if they like this book, but The Mote in God's Eye. I could not finish the book. I couldn't get into it. It just didn't interest me. The characters didn't interest me. It just wasn't something I was all that enamored with when I tried to read it. I may pick it up again someday. Probably won't though. Another book, Scipio Africanus. It's about the guy that finally defeated Hannibal, but it was kind of boring. I kept waiting for the action to happen, and I think 75 pages in, nothing except him hanging out at his villa had happened, and I was tired of reading that, so I moved on. And another one was Loose Cannon by David Drake. It's a much older book. It was supposed to be like a techno thriller kind of Tom Clancy-ish thing with a sci-fi connection, but it was really not very good. I didn't like the main character at all. I didn't like the way anything was described in the book, and it was just not good. So I DNF'd it. Number 8, book you are currently reading. So there's a bunch of books I'm currently reading. 1984 is one of them. Thunder Rift by a guy named Matthew Farrell, who is actually a pen name for Stephen Lee. It's about a ship that goes through this rift in space that has appeared by Jupiter, and they're looking for whoever made that little rift because they can tell that it was artificial. I'm also reading a book called City of Fortune by Roger Crowley, which is a history of Venice. And then Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is basically about what's called an artificial friend that this girl buys. And I'm about a quarter of the way through that. So it's okay so far. It's not great. It's not blowing me away the way some of the other YouTubers are talking about it. Last book I recommended to somebody. Living in Sweden, I don't have a lot of common reading ground with most of the people that I work with. Back when I was in the States, the last book I can remember recommending to somebody was called Heroes Die by Matthew Woodring Stover. And it's just a fantastic book. The ending, the whole book is great, and the ending is really good too. Just, yeah, great book, Heroes Die. Number 10, the newest book I've read by publication date is probably My Effin' Life by Geddy Lee. I'm a huge Rush fan, so reading Geddy Lee's autobiography was pretty much a no-brainer for me. It's an easy read. He wrote it well, um, and it's very interesting because it starts off with his parents meeting during the Holocaust in World War II, and then goes through his life as a young child after his father died, and then him and Alex getting together and then forming Rush and finding Neil Peart later. Really good book. Number 11, oldest book you've read by publication date. Probably the oldest book I've read would be Dracula, if we're talking about novels. If we're pretty much talking about anything, I would say the oldest thing I've read is probably Macbeth. Number 12, plays or short stories. I'm a short story guy. I've tried to read plays in the past, and I don't know if it was maybe just the way they were written or what, but I couldn't get anything out of what the characters were doing or feeling in the play themselves just from what I was reading. So I didn't try to read too many plays for very long. So I'm more of a short story guy. Number 13, borrowing books or buying. Buying is pretty much what I've always done. There have been stints where I've gone to the library a bunch, but especially now since I live in Sweden, it's really tough to borrow because the library section is it's got such a small English section that it's hard to find what I want there. So pretty much buying is what I do, and most of it's online ebooks. Number 14, a book you dislike that everyone else seems to love. So Alistair Reynolds wrote a book called House of Suns that I really just don't like that much. Everybody else raves about it. They always point to it as the standalone book that'll get you into Alistair Reynolds. And I've read Revelation Space, Absolution Gap, Redemption Arc, Chasm City, and a couple other books of his. The Prefect, which I really loved. The Prefect was great. Um, you know, so I've read plenty of Alistair Reynolds, Century Rain. I read that one too. Um, but I didn't like House of Suns that much. And I think one of the biggest knocks on it was that it ends the same way some of his other books do, and that's with a sublight chase through space that's taking hundreds or thousands of years. And I don't know how he manages to come up with descriptions of these things for 50 to 100 pages because it just seems it gets very boring to me after about 30 pages. I don't want to read anymore. I just want to get to the end. What happens at the end of the chase? And that's just not one I've really liked. That's on the sci-fi side. On the fantasy side, everybody seems to like the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. And I read Assassin's Apprentice. It was okay. But then I read Royal Assassin, and it felt like all the main character did was run around the castle for 500 pages talking to different people. And it was well done. I'm not knocking it. The ending was put together well, and I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. And I just didn't like the character's reaction to what was really going on under everything. When I finished it, I tried to read the next book, forget what it was called, Assassin's Quest maybe, and it felt like the first 50 pages was Robin Hobb explaining all the problems with the previous book. So I set that down and I haven't picked up a Robin Hobb book since. So I have no interest in her stuff. Number 15, bookmarks or dog ears. Bookmarks. Always bookmarks. I don't dog ear my pages. Respect your books, people. Don't dog ear them. Use bookmarks. Number 16, a book you can always reread. I rarely reread anything. I've got enough new material that I haven't touched that I don't really have time to reread if I ever want to get to all these in my lifetime. So I don't do that. If I had to reread something, it would probably be R.A. Salvatore, Tim Powers, Dan Jones, or Clive Barker. One of those four. 17. Can you read while hearing music? Yeah, I can read with music in the background. Classical's fine. It's probably the best because it can be low and you don't really notice it too much. If I can't do classical, then I'll listen to rock music that's a bit drony, like Alice in Chains. Some of their songs are drony. Tool is kind of drony a lot of the time. So they're both pretty good if you have them on low volume. If you got anything that's going up and down too much or has too much variation too fast, then it kind of pulls me out of it. Number 18, one POV or multiple POVs. I kind of think that whatever's right for the story and the format should be used. In my opinion, too many POVs in a short story is a bad idea. Anything more than three in a story that's under 30 to 40 pages is probably way too many. So, there's that. If you've got 1,000-page book and you need 12 POVs, go for it. I mean, it's 1,000 pages. You should have plenty of room. One thing I don't like, though, is if you end one POV on page 100 and you don't get back to it again until page 300, that I don't like because by the time I get to page 300, so much may have happened that I may have to go back to page 100 just to figure out what the heck was going on with that guy that's popping up again now. So, yeah, whatever's right for the story, but not too many in a short story, basically is my answer. Number 19, do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? I'm a multiple day guy. I can only think of one book that I've ever read in one day, and that was Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I sat down one Sunday morning, opened it up at 8:30, and I think I read until 6 p.m. with a break for lunch and dinner, and that's when I finished it. So there's that. So that's the questions I have from the internet or from the other videos that I've seen, but I've got a few questions of my own here, kind of bonus questions. Bonus question one, favorite book you had to read in high school or college? And for me, there are actually three. Lord of the Flies by William Golding, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. I thought those three books were great. So that's what, if I had to reread something from high school, it would be one of those three. Bonus question two, great book with a terrible cover. I mentioned Heroes Die earlier. Really love the book. And I'm not even sure what got me to pick it up in the first place because the cover just wasn't good. It's very hokey looking in my opinion, and I don't really like it. I wish they'd put it out with a better cover or a new edition or something with a nicer cover. But no knock on the artist. I'm sure they're a fine artist or whatever, but just that's my answer to that. Bonus question three, a book you read just because of the cover. And again, I've mentioned this book already once, The Strange Affair of Spring-Heeled Jack. Just, I loved the cover. It caught my attention. I think I was at Borders one day. I had a coupon that had like a 90% off, and I think I paid all of $1.25 for the book, and it was probably the best $1.25 I've spent in a bookstore in 20 years. It's a great book. Last but not least, bonus question four. Do you keep the books you've read, give them away, or sell them? So I keep the ones that had something that really blew me away or something unique or interesting about them. Everything else has got to go. I'm much older now. I don't want to carry these kind of things around all the time. So as soon as I finish a book, unless it really caught my attention and really had me riveted, I pretty much advertise it and get rid of it. So there's that. Sometimes I give them to people at work if they express any interest, but it's pretty rare that that even happens. So anyway, that's my answers to those questions. Hopefully this has given you something to think about. And if you're out there and you're considering a booktube channel or already have one, maybe you should do a video like this too. Bye for now.